to today's podcast, and we're going to be talking about a number of different things, one of it being the slaughtering of Christians in countries like Nigeria, Congo, and Mozambique. And I spoke about it last week, and so we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about why does God need to be in government? Why does Christianity and the gospel need to be in government? What does it mean to have a separation between church and state? Is it constitutional? Is it not constitutional? Is it godly? Is it not godly? Because, where do we draw the line? We're going to be talking about that. And so there's a bunch of videos I want us to go right into. I also said last week that we'll touch on the Hamas-Israel thing. Of course, some stuff has evolved right now with, since last week. Of course, that's happened. So I think I have some of the latest videos. It might have been latest, and maybe now it's not latest anymore, but I just wanted to throw some of that stuff in there. But I primarily wanted to focus on, God and government, and what does it mean when people make statements like separation between church and state. So for those of you tuning in, thank you very much. Brooke's in the process of sharing this on different platforms. In fact, I'm sharing some of this right now. So I want to encourage you to share the podcast. And if you tune in and you comment on the podcast about any particular subject that we might have missed out on, we don't make any promises, but there's a pretty good chance we would bring it in the next time. So anytime you're like, hey, listen, why don't you speak about this, or why don't you bring this up? The purpose of this podcast is we believe that a lot of Christians is not focused enough on politics in, speaking out about what's happening politically. I've said this for the longest time, but the number one reason why South Africa is in the mess that it is today was because of the transition in 1994, because nobody knew what was going on. Everybody was blind to it. And the church, if the church stood up and spoke out, it wouldn't have happened. That's my personal conviction. And very specifically the church in South Africa, but to a degree the church globally. So today we sit with a very big mess in that country, and so everybody thought they selected a hero, but they actually selected back in 1994, a terrorist that bombed a bus full of kids, and so perhaps I will do another podcast on that subject at a later point in time, but those are the facts, and so we believe that it is the church's duty to speak out about certain things politically, because if you do not speak out about them, people are going to go around foolishly and sheepishly and make certain decisions, which has been happening for the longest time. And so, we need to speak on certain things. So we try and keep this as accurate as possible, and that's why we play these videos. But, I actually got here with me a small Constitution of the United States right here. And it is by Turning Point USA. So, of course, this is Charlie Cook that was, handing these things out because he wanted Christians in the United States to be understanding of what the Constitution is. So I sit here with the Constitution in my hand. And perhaps on another podcast, we're going to go in depth into what the Constitution says. But I can tell you this, that right here, it does not say that there is a separation between between church and state. There was a letter that was sent way back when that the suggestion was made, and it was actually by the only Catholic state in the country when this nation was first formed, so that they could stop the government from having one religion, meaning one denomination, and so controlling everything and everyone, like what they used to do in England, because the national, like today in Russia, you have only one legal denomination, and that is I believe it's called, I could be wrong on this, so forgive me if but there's one denomination, and I believe it's called the Protestant, the Russian Protestant Church. So, and that is, everybody else is basically illegal because it's a communist kind of a system. And so even England, if you speak to anybody from England and you ask them, of course, we got friends that are Pentecostal or charismatic. We love them dearly. They're great people, great men and women of God. And so some of that's changed, but originally, even not very long ago, the national denomination was the Anglican Church. If you speak to most British people, I'm Christian. What denomination? Oh, I'm Anglican. Why? Because it was a one-state denomination. And so the purpose of that was to stop that from happening, because the government shouldn't dictate what the church believes, but instead the church should have an influence in the government. Those are two different things, all right? And so, so the government should not be controlling everything. So we are fundamentally capitalist, because the Bible is fundamentally capitalist. And so being capitalist means that the government has less control over things instead of more control, meaning private control is always better than the corporate control. And because corporate control in its purest form is not really as corporate as people might think it is, because it's still an individual sitting at the top, being corrupt, pocketing all the money. And so that's why, the objective here is to, and people's like, well, socialism isn't always bad. It's wicked to the core. So, and, sometimes I make these statements, and I elaborate on it later. And I believe some of that's what's going to happen today. But one of the things that instigated or that prompted me to speak on this is, and I think I brought it up last week, is that let me just respond to this individual. Forgive me. One of the things that prompted me to go on the subject, specifically about the Islam thing, terrorism, Christians being persecuted, all that kind of thing, is Christians are driving around in the town we live. Now, for those of you that don't understand where we live, we're in northern Wisconsin, Tomahawk, Wisconsin. 3,400 people. It's pretty remote, pretty rural. Everybody here, I always joke about it, and I say that everybody, so this is my joke, and I'm not the only one. People use this all the time. They say there are more Lutherans than people in Wisconsin and Minnesota, because even the cow and the dog is a Lutheran. And so, and that's true. But it's half a truth, because the other half is Catholic. So the Catholic thing is kind of dwindling. People's kind of getting sick of it. And so, but that is accurate. So there are a lot of Lutherans around. And so there isn't anything, everybody, there is barely any other denominations. And if there is, it's very few and far between. And, it's not prominent. So this is where we're at, right? Now, to lead to the next thing, and so what I was getting at is people drive around with these stickers that says coexist, and you'll find on there the different religions: Christianity, Islam, Buddha, Hinduism, whatever, all these different things, and Judaism, and of course, and all that. So, but in it sounds good. Let's just live in peace. Let's just live in peace. But if you do not understand the motive of certain religions, and that certain religions cannot live in peace, you have a problem. Secondly, the reason I'm bringing this up is it's like, have you used your brains in realizing that where you live, there are so very few people having other religions, and if they have it, nobody bothers them. Nobody's going to bother you. I know about people in the area personally that practice what I would call occultism, or maybe even Satanism. I know it for a fact. Nobody bothers them. People know about it. So it's not that we're not living in peace as Christians. It's that Christians need to realize that there are religions that's out there to take out Christianity. Full stop and period. And if you don't wake up, there's going to come a time when it's too late. So Brooke, if you can go ahead, just start with the first one and we'll just roll through them. And I can kind of, as you get it ready, I'll watch it. And as we watch it, just make sure the volume's up because, it doesn't help anybody if the host is half deaf.
We have a horrific and graphic report to share with you.
Just pause it 1 second.
Over 30...
Just 1 second. Just need to pull this up so I can see. All right, let's go.
Christians have been beheaded by the Islamic State Mozambique province, also known as ISMP. CBN's Billy Hollowell joins me now. Billy, how are you processing this?
It is hard to process the fact that you, in 2025, have people around the world who are terrorists who are beheading Christians. It is the most horrific thing imaginable. And we've seen this again and again and again. And I think for me, the thing I'm processing is this reality that in America, we live with such freedom, right? We have our debates, we have our issues over the First Amendment, we have our fights, we have our political infighting and our battles. But the freedom that we live with, I think, isolates us from the reality and the understanding that most people around the world are living in utter horror. And most people around the world, most Christians, are living in places where persecution is so dire that you can get beheaded simply for loving Jesus. And so that is convicting to me. It always sort of brings me back to, do I understand the freedom that I have? Do I understand the ability to worship that I have? Do I appreciate that? And then the second conviction is, am I praying enough for these people? The fact that you have 30 people beheaded, it is so satanic and ungodly and evil. And yet, am I praying enough for those in duress around the world?
Well, ISMP proudly released photos of their demonic savagery, and the incredible organization Memory captured some of those photos. I don't know if we can show them. I'll have to talk to one of our editors, and if we can, we'll put them on the screen. If not, just know that it's barbaric. But what's really disturbing is that these people are proud of it. Billy, what's really struck me is, can you imagine? I mean, can you imagine if the headline wrote, "The IDF beheads 30 Palestinians"? We would be talking about the biggest news story, I mean, since 9/11. I can't even imagine. And yet, if you Google search Mozambique, there's I think Christianity Today and maybe another Christian organization. Nothing from CNN, nothing from any I'm not just talking about CNN. I'm talking about, when I say CNN, I mean the general New York Times, Washington Post, Fox News. I mean, anybody. I have not seen anybody pick this up. And this isn't uncommon. We did a story earlier this year about how 70 Christians were beheaded in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Obviously, there's a genocide happening against Christians in Nigeria. There's just this awful, atrocious stuff, but nothing's happening on American college campuses. Where are the flotillas? Where is anything? Where is even a poster? Where is a social media post about the extermination? And it's not just there's bombs happening. For example, there's bombs in Ukraine. There's bombs in other conflict zones. These aren't bombs. These are people like in Nigeria, like in the DRC, like now in Mozambique, that are being beheaded with knives and cut to pieces with machetes. And the world does not care. No Jews, no news. And, I'm frustrated for the people in Africa and other places like this, the Christians, our fellow believers, because I just don't see what would, unless the IDF was somehow implicated in some of these killings, that the world's going to care. And I know that's being cynical, but this is just another story that no one on the campus of Columbia or UCLA or the University of Michigan is even going to know about, let alone care about. But that's different for us. I know you, the CBN viewer, Billy and I, we care. And we're going to bring light to the story, and we're going to pray for the name of Yeshua, for the Holy Spirit to flood places like Mozambique and Nigeria, Plateau State, and the DRC. There's just so much darkness, Father. I'm sorry to pray, but I can't help it. Lord God, we pray for the name of Yeshua to comfort our fellow believers in Nigeria, in Mozambique, and all over Africa. Father, we pray for your will to be done in that continent, Lord. Yeah, in the name of Jesus, amen. But Billy, I will give you the last word because, yeah, I'm just frustrated for our brothers and sisters.
I mean, we know that Christian persecution is the worst form of persecution. It is intensifying around the world. We know.
Thank you. Okay, let me start off with the positive. We pray every day. You should be praying. It's a good thing. There's a lot of spiritual value to it. And for those that pray the prayer of faith, James 5 says it makes tremendous power available. Great, awesome. Do you think those people aren't praying that's being beheaded? I'm just saying, do you think they're not praying? You think somebody's going to give their life in not betraying their one and only Savior, Jesus Christ, go stand there and say, I'm not confessing Allah, so therefore you can chop my head off, and then think they haven't prayed yet? I mean, I don't know if this, like sometimes I wonder if it's an IQ issue or an education issue or a bit of both. I'm not sure. But seriously, that is not going to change that situation. There's only one thing that stops that kind of evil from happening, and that is a military force. And the people that are there is in a very dire situation. And do I agree that somehow the world should step out and do something? Yeah, the UN always wants to bring peace, peace, peace. There is no peace in Islam. It just has never happened. It doesn't happen. Part of Islam's belief is that you go to heaven by persecuting Christians. And the sooner people get it, the better. That's why they ought not be in the United States. Charlie Kirk made it loud and clear, and he had a whole long thing about it as to why it shouldn't happen. And here we are having Christians that love Jesus, that let's live in peace together. I agree, but I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. So, at some point, people need to stop being spooky spiritual and start being practical and having common sense, realizing, hey, this hasn't changed in hundreds and hundreds of years. Is it going to change now? Secondly, it's their religion is to kill Christians. You get extra points in heaven as a Muslim. Not that I'm saying you will go to heaven, they actually go to hell, but by killing Christians. Or other religions too, but especially Christians. So, and Jews. So, right, so now that I've said that, yeah, no Jews, no news. I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm not anti-Semitic, but it is kind of true, no Jews, no news, because the Jews own most of the news channels, and some of them, unfortunately, are liberal, very, very liberal. I'm not talking about the state of Israel, but it's kind of true. So, hey, Laurie, thank you for tuning in. Everybody watching, please do us a favor, share the broadcast. And so, if you comment on here, that helps me. And I'm going to comment in there right now, and I'll just say, thank you. Thank you for tuning in, so you can see that I'm actually watching what you're saying. Yeah, share it. Right, so I wanted to make that clear because Christians are so The Christians are so oblivious, and they have no idea. They have no idea how the world functions. People's like, what do you know about Mozambique? We used to go there twice a year at some point, but at least once a year, every year for many years, and do mission trips. I can drive that country without a map, especially the bottom 2/3 of that country. We've ministered personally to some of the terrorist groups. Here's a scary stat, so you can ask my wife. The people that are actually in rebellion are more legit than the government. So people's like, how does it even work? I'm just trying to prove a point. You don't know what's going on there, and then you want to live in peace with every religion in the United States. You need to get it. You need to get educated all over again. So, all right, let's go to the next one, Brooke. Thank you.
At least 43 Christians have been brutally massacred by an ISIS affiliate at a church in Congo. Where is the global outcry? Well, Dexter Van Zyl, managing editor at the Middle East Forum, joins us now. Dexter, what can you tell us?
This looks an awful lot like a recreation of the October 7th massacre that took place in Israel in 2023. It's on a smaller scale, but essentially what it is, it's a vicious attack against, Congolese civilians, against Christians, in an attempt to basically terrorize Christians into submitting to an ideology of Muslim male supremacism. That's what's going on here. There were bodies that were burned. We saw that on the October 7th attack. And essentially the whole point, and it looks as if in some reports that they were hostages taken, that people were kidnapped during the course of this attack, and they don't know where the victims are. That's what this is. This is another October 7th attack perpetrated on African soil. That's what this is.
So here's the question, my brother. Why do stories like this, media outlets will put out a statement, and then by and large, the world just glosses over these stories and moves right on? Why does no one seem to care?
I've said it before on your show, no Jews, no news. Okay? And this is really what
All right,
the
that's
issue
fine.
is.
Thanks.
That,
I appreciate it. We don't need to see
part
more.
of it is that it's just a lot harder.
Okay, so the reason I have them show these videos is I want to make sure that people understand this is not like a little here, a little there. This has been ongoing in all these countries for the longest time. As long as Islam's present, there's a problem for Christianity, all right? And so we need to realize this. We need to wake up, and we need to understand that Islam is not the friend of Christianity. Now, if you're non-Christian, you're like, I don't care about it. You either become Islam or you fall under the category of Christianity. It's that simple. That's how they view it. And so I simply wanted to show people that because I'll add this in there. People don't understand that this is just what the media knows about. What about the stuff happening on a daily basis that the media doesn't know about? What about that stuff, right? What happens with that? Now, let's... Now, the one in Mozambique, I'll just say this, because I don't think Heidi Baker's on that video, but Heidi Baker has a big ministry. She feeds many, many kids up north in Mozambique, and I believe it's called Pemba. And I don't know the woman personally. I know a lot of people that does know her personally. She's, I believe, a great missionary up there. And she's reported on some of these things. And if there's anybody that knows how to love people, it's probably Heidi Baker. From my understanding, again, I don't know her personally. I think she's willing to put up with a lot more than I would. South Africans usually put up with a lot less crap than most other people because we've just had enough of it. And so you get to a point where you're just sick of dealing with it. So, and anyway, so I believe she's doing a great job there. So for those of you that want to go check it out, go on her page and go check out what she's saying. This is not fabricated stuff. People need to understand it. So this is ongoing continually. I said it last week. People's like, well, this is new news. It's not new news. It's continual. It is continual. So you got to understand the whole thing here, right? Now, I do want to get kind of to the next subject here, which is, we've touched now, did we touch all three videos? Mozambique, Nigeria, and Congo. Did we do all three? Why do I feel we've only done two? All right, let's do the third one. I thought we skipped one. I just went down the line of what was on there, and I thought we were already at that one, but we just did a different order. All right, let's play the next one on the Islam deal with Christians being killed and beheaded. I think that would be the Nigeria one. Nigeria is the most brutal of them all, other than the Middle East.
In the African nation of Nigeria, millions of Christians are persecuted by Islamic terror groups. The Nigerian government is doing very little to stop the attacks. Well, now religious freedom advocates, including one member of the U.S. Congress, are taking action. CBN's Kelly Wright has this look at the crisis.
On this very day, 210 persons were slaughtered in one night, in less than 24 hours.
The video from the Father's Day massacre includes graphic images of people being burned alive, families attacked, and homes destroyed in Yelawata, Nigeria.
That very day, it was raining, so Fulani herdsmen, they invaded the community and claimed so many lives.
Around 12 midnight, we started having calls from Yelawata that the Fulanis have come and they are killing, burning.
Friday night, I was leaving my house. See my house there. I come here, they shoot gun. Later, they come, they break the house. Where my brother, my friend is living here with his children. Nearby, they come, they kill people. They were breaking the house. Say, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar.
These first-hand accounts gathered by Truth Nigeria journalists describe the ongoing atrocities in a terror campaign to eradicate Nigeria's Christians. Judd Saul, filmmaker and missionary, the organizer of equipping the persecuted, highlighted this documentary as a way to sound the alarm.
We need to fight this thing threefold. One, America as a government needs to get involved with a very little. I'm talking very little of our resources. If we just did the very little bit of push an aggressive foreign policy, throw some sanctions, whatever it takes, I think we can put a significant dent in this and put a stop to this.
U.S. Representative Chris Smith of New Jersey, who has traveled to many dangerous areas in Nigeria, has introduced a resolution in Congress to help stop attacks fueled by religious hatred.
There has been an exponential increase in attacks on Christians and some Muslims, but Christians in particular. Protestants, evangelicals, Catholics, they're firebombing their churches. The Fulani are killing them with absolute impunity. We've called on the government in Abuja and the president several times to do what governments do, law enforcement. Use the military if you have to, but stop this genocide and do it now.
The resolution points to Nigeria's government's apparent open border policy that allows almost free access to the country. Fulani militants and ISIS-linked extremist groups from neighboring countries take advantage of this policy to carry out mass murder, rape, and kidnappings.
We're also calling on President Trump to reissue, which he did in his first term, the designation of country of particular concern, and that then gives the president wide latitude to impose sanctions. It's an excellent bill when it's used properly. It gets the attention of all the policymakers, in this case in Abuja. It says, we're not kidding.
During a White House press briefing, I asked Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt about the crisis in Nigeria. And do you know if there's any action that the president will take?
I'm not tracking a call between the president and the head of Nigeria. I know the president wholeheartedly condemns the persecution of Christians or, frankly, of people of any faith all over the world, but I don't have any updates for you in terms of sanctions in this part of the world.
Looking beyond any government response, Judge Saul is calling on the church and Christians in America to stand with the persecuted in Nigeria.
They need to pray. They need to be a voice for the voiceless. They need to be a voice for our persecuted brothers and sisters.
Kelly Wright, CBN News.
Well, whatever pressure we can put on the Nigerian government, we need to put it on the Nigerian government.
That's it. Thanks.
They're the one responsible.
Okay. Yeah. So that should give you an idea of what's going on, been going on, nonstop. And if, Brooke, if you can go directly into, and again, what does this have to do with God and government? Well, if a government is continually favoring Islam and every other religion above Christianity, you know, eventually you run into a problem where if half the country is Christian, then that has a huge, conflict of interest. And that's what's happened with the United States, is that that's the direction we were heading in. And so people ask me all the time, do you agree with every single decision that President Trump is making? Probably not. But I'll do say this, that at least we have somebody in the White House praying. So, and people's like, well, that shouldn't be, we shouldn't mix church and religion. So are you saying to me that I need to serve a God and obey a government at the same time that doesn't serve God publicly? It just doesn't add up to me. We had some videos that, Brooke, if you can play those moments from Tom's videos, we meant to play them in that very first podcast that we did on, this was not last week, but the week before. There were just some moments there as to things that's going on behind the scenes that I wanted to bring to light. Dr. Phil's in there. I love the man. He's a great guy. I like people that are straight and to the point. And then if you can get those moments and then just scroll through them. So these are just some things that people are saying that's
new with our panel. And we're almost on time, members. We're almost on time.
Okay, hold on. Pause. Go back and put the volume up.
Coaches. And this was the original panel we were.
All right, let's go.
Started with at the very beginning, before the tragedy yesterday in Minnesota and the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So we thought it was important for this commission to talk about that and to share thoughts and hear from those who knew him and those who knew about him and his teachings. So our witnesses, Coach Joe Kennedy, Monica Gill, Marisol Arroyo Castro, and Keisha Russell. And Coach Kennedy, we are going to begin with you as we talk about how religious liberty is denied on campuses.
Week-long series. And I think that was courage at two different levels. And I'm glad you actually brought that up, because the courage of you three is astounding. And I did want to make this a comment and a question here. We talk about psychology as being on the secular side of this, and that there's often a conflict. And it's not really in my opinion. It's not necessarily, nor is education. It's how you do it. You know, there's not necessarily, there doesn't have to be a conflict between faith and science. Certainly not between faith and psychology, because of free will and helping people find a moral compass. And that's what we have to do. And, you know, in psychology, we talk about finding evidence-based treatments, and that's where you get to the truth, you know, the capital T truth, as we talked about. And what I want everybody that's paying attention to this commission to understand is that our children are a blank slate. I mean, there's some genetic things that come with a child, but they're basically a blank slate that will be written on. It will be written on. And the question is, who's going to do that writing? And we can delegate some of that, but we cannot abdicate it. We cannot abdicate it, particularly as we have these teachers' unions, and we have these lawyer groups representing these teachers' unions. And there has been a tremendous shift that people don't know about. If you look at the colleges and universities right now, particularly in the humanities, social sciences, and education, some surveys nationwide show that there's a 42-to-1 ratio between left liberal professors to conservative professors that acknowledge religious beliefs. 64% of students say they've been in a course where a very liberal agenda was run, versus being in a course where 12% say anything conservative or with a spiritual underpinning was run. I mean, so we're creating a whole generation of graduates that are coming out that are going to be going into the schools. And the oldest battle ever is between good and evil. And there has to be a call to action from this community inspired by the likes of you three. There has to be a call to action. And I often tell people, you're not going to be the only voice in your child's ear, so you better make sure you're the best voice in your child's ear, because they're getting so much from the internet. And when you look at this wokeism that Charlie Kirk talked about so much, they blatantly reject universal truth. They blatantly reject religion. They blatantly reject path to God and shape this based on their individual experience and truth. There is no single path to God. And the most common way to lose power is to think you don't have it to begin with. And we do have power, and we need to rally with that power. And you can avoid criticism by just becoming wallpaper. And it's estimated that 365 million Christians have been persecuted and discriminated against worldwide in the last year. And we need to reach out of our bubble, and we need to get involved in our schools. We need to, and the way you do that is you don't run up the stairs with your hair on fire accusing everybody of doing something wrong. The speech you give in anger will be the best speech you ever regret. You've got to go in and get engaged and find out, how can I help? How can I become part of the narrative? And passion is not anger. There's a big difference. And one of the things that the biggest mistake Charlie Kirk did not make is to assume that he had time. We don't have time. We don't know if I will finish this sentence. We don't know if we will be here at the end of this sentence. We have to understand and act now. Children in America right now are at epidemic levels of mental health crisis, and that means spiritual crisis. There has been a 62% increase in depression with older teens in the last 10 to 15 years. There's been a 189% increase with preteens in depression in the last 10 to 15 years. There's been a 70% increase in suicide with older teens and a 151% increase in suicide among preteens. Why? Because they have an existential crisis. They have not found their way to God. And I've been in private practice. I've been working with people in America. When people find God, their health improves, doors open, relationships blossom. Everything changes. And all of a sudden, I seem like the greatest therapist in the world because they found God. And we have to recognize our young people are in crisis right now. And all of you three standing your ground will solve that. You will solve that. God bless you for your courage. God bless you for standing up. And the call to action from this commission needs to be for every parent, every teacher to stand up and lead people down that path. There is one way to solve this, and it's by finding the way back to God, and there is one path. And we need to speak that with clarity and courage, whether it's popular with.
Okay, thanks. So first of all, are we back? Am I back on? All right. So Amos Polly, thank you for tuning in. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If I'm mispronouncing it, please forgive me. Thank you for tuning in. Linda, this is from the Faith Commission in the White House. This actually happened very recently. This is not a secular thing. And so there are things being addressed. There's even some things here that is behind the scenes happening that there's a very, very strong push by certain organizations that is very strongly linked to the Democratic Party to push for the exact opposite, meaning to get faith out of everything, Christianity out of everything. So that's kind of what this discussion was about in the White House with the Faith Commission. And I just brought it in. One, we didn't get to play this video during the time we had an interview with Evangelist Tom Scarella. Was the first one 3 weeks ago, not this previous Friday, but the Friday before. And I thought it will tie in really good with the subject that I'm speaking on, which is why God and government. So that was kind of the same subject a little bit. I was more focusing, or we were more focusing on Charlie Kirk, and we went into a little bit of a broader subject. Tom did a great job there. But I needed to bring this in so people can see what's going on, right? And people need to realize that not everything, let me put it to you like this. It's people, you might have the view that if your kid is in school and they bring you a neutral or a slightly more worldly, neutral but more worldly education with no Christianity in it, that Sunday mornings is enough if you're going to be in church every Sunday. Now, from experience, every pastor will tell you it's a small minority of people that's in church every Sunday. Meaning, and nonetheless, the kids. Youth have stuff going on all the time, so they're not going to be there every week. If your youth service is on a Wednesday or a Thursday, that's typically when it is. Some is on a Friday, most is on a Wednesday. It's once a week. The kids have sports games. When the sports game's going on, they don't show up for most of them don't show up every week, So if you have, 50 plus weeks of services in a year, they're going to probably show up to about 40, 45, But services is an hour to 2 hours, depending on what kind of church you're in. And some more, but most of them actually less than an hour. And so if, take 1 hour of Christian education versus how many hours a day, you get more education in one day, influence in one day in a school than you get in 1 week in the church. You understand? You've got to think about this practically is what I'm getting at. All right, go to the next video.
Charlie Kirk
the first time in Las Vegas, of all places. The evangelical group for Trump was having a rally, and a single, tall, skinny guy showed up at that rally. The police were trying to come in and, under orders, shut us down. It was total chaos. There were several thousand people there. And right in the middle of it was Charlie Kirk. He was dating a beautiful girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. Her name was Erica, and they would ultimately get married. And that was when I began to develop a relationship with him. I was amazed at his boldness. I was encouraged by his youth and his zeal, but his knowledge. He had zeal and knowledge. He could stand with the best in debate. And through the years, we kept in touch and would be together in places. And then just November of last year, he called me, or his assistant called me and said, "We have a problem." And I said, "What is the problem?" And they said, "Well, Charlie is wanting to come to the Atlanta area, and no church will let him use their building. And we can't find a building big enough to rent." And he said, "Can we use your building?" And I said, "No, you cannot." He said, "Can we rent it?" And I said, "No, you cannot, but you can have it." And so they came, and there were over 1,000 pastors that came. And that's why this group is so important, because pastors are feeling the pressure in every way. I'm just in the trenches. I'm a pastor. I pastored the same church for 34 years. Me and my wife have been married 38 years, so we were kids. We didn't know what we were doing. My knees weren't knocking, they were missing. That's the only church I ever preached or pastored at. And God has blessed us exceedingly abundantly. But we took a strong stand. And Charlie flew in. He had been on the road. This was your leader. He had been on the road for 3 weeks every night, working up to the election. He believed in his core that if America lost that election, that it was the Rubicon of the point of no return. And he flew in, and he had these little things matter, I think, as you said. He flew in and had a migraine headache, a terrible migraine headache. I understood he would have those occasionally, and he was not seeing out of one of his eyes, that severe. And the lights in the green room were so bothering him, we had to find a room in the church where he could lay down before he went up to speak to these 1,000 pastors. And so we ended up in the nursing room. Of course, we ran all the nurse ladies out that needed that, and because it had no windows. And I guess it just matters to me. These are some of the memories that he laid back there for 30 minutes. He was sick. He was nauseated. But he got right up when it was time. He walked out on the stage. You would have never known that the man had a problem. He was brilliant. He was outstanding. And as soon as it was over, we said goodbye, and he jumped had a plane waiting and went to the next place. And I said all of that to say he was a Christian leader. And I'll close with just a few quick parallels. The first Christian martyr was Stephen, and he was not an apostle. He was not a preacher. He was a Christian leader. And Charlie was not a pastor or a preacher or an apostle. He was a bishop. He was a Christian leader.
Thank you.
He was in a...
So the primary thing I wanted you to see there is that, did you see how when Jensen Franklin stood up, he said, Charlie went to all these churches and none of them would have him? And then because Jensen knew him, he said, you can't rent from us, but you can have the building. And so we found the same thing. Most Christians won't speak about it. They won't stand up. They won't speak about it. That's why we're doing this. But this is a pretty long video. And I just wanted to comment on it because it's like, when are people going to wake up? When are they waking up? Right. Brooke, we're not finished with that video, are we? How many minutes left on that? Is that the section that he said watch the whole thing? Okay, just play the last like 3 or 4 minutes on it.
Be on these people, forgive them. It's what he heard a man say as he was being assassinated. It touched the apostle Saul of Tarsus, and he would encounter Christ on the road to Damascus, and he would become the great apostle Paul, the evangelist, and the writer of 14 epistles. And when I sat at the funeral the other day, and I was so moved when Erica got up and said what the first martyr of the Christian church said, I forgive the assassin. And I was like everybody else, the people who were there. It was amazing, the speakers. I've never been more proud of America. I've never been more proud of religious freedom as politicians, not pastors and preachers, just good Christian leaders and faith leaders. And by the way, we don't have the luxury of disunity anymore. If I don't speak up for the Mormons that died yesterday, and I don't speak up for the Catholics that died, their precious children, as a Christian pastor, we are all needing to stand together as never before. We just spent $1.2 million, and I'll close, I'm done. But we just spent $1.2 million. We have 8 campuses on detectors. We're under attack. We had 2, I need to be careful because they're still in prison now, but we had 2 men 4 weeks ago stand up in the middle of our service in the sanctuary where I preach, and we broadcast out to our other campuses. But there's 3,300 seats in that room. And they stood up and they began to scream out, and they began to threaten our congregation that death was coming, destruction was coming. They resisted the officers. There was a fight that broke out. They had to be tasered. People just coming to church to worship God and terrified. And I thought, will we have anybody next Sunday? But like in the Bible, the more they afflicted them, the more we grew. On the Sunday after Charlie Kirk's assassination, just in the one campus, we had over 2,000 people than we had the same time that Sunday a year ago. We had people in the overflow out in our chapel. We had people out in the amphitheater. And we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and it has continued. Yesterday was incredible. We had over 1,000 more than we ever had before. But I said all of that to say this in conclusion, that we're under attack. It's not coming, it's here. Our family and my loved ones, my children, we've had to deal with this. And I know all of you understand that, but this commission is so important. I've said in every session, and I want to thank you. And if ever we needed to stand together and stand up for what we believe and the faith, it's time for pastors and preachers to do that. And my prayer is, as Charlie fell and the Apostle Paul stood up, the church and 10,000 preachers will stand up and say, where he fell, we will stand like never before. And thank you so much. Charlie.
All right, thanks, Brooke. We just had a pastor friend. We're not know the guy very well, but we've met him once. He's got a pretty big church on the West Coast. About 2 months prior to Charlie Kirk's assassination, somebody drove in and shot a new convert right in their church at the entrance in front of his kids and children. And they drove off, and the vehicle that was involved was found in a different spot in a different parking lot, church parking lot actually, like within a day after the vehicle was burned. And so as far as I'm aware, nothing's happened since in terms of finding evidence against it. Most of these things, of course, being in the state of Washington, that's where, you know, and in that specific spot in Washington, in the city, you know, it's pretty intense, and there's a lot of crime and a lot of hatred and all that kind of stuff. So you can probably address it to that, and there's suspicion that that might have been a mob. But in general, you'll see that there is a very strong push from Christians, forgive me, from non-Christians behind the scenes, and it's not everybody. It's not everybody, but there is some organized stuff going on that's pushing certain agendas, and especially violence. So I mean, our security has gone up, way up. We've had warnings about these things, and so we have brought in all kinds of measures of security. And people's like, well, this is just a gay guy that's, it's just a gay guy that assassinated Charlie Kirk, or a trans guy, or whatever it is. He was angry, blah, 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 the whole spiel. Why do you think they're saying they're following the money trail? Why do you think that Kash Patel publicly, in context of the Charlie Kirk assassination, said, we are following the money trail? There's a lot more behind this. And so this stuff's been going on. Christians has just not been aware of it, and still choose not to believe it. Some, of course, still choose not to believe it. But yeah, and but we just want to speak out about it, and we want to bring these things to light. Brooke, I know we're kind of almost running out of time. I did promise that we will speak on that Israel's thing and all that. Before they go into the Israel thing, people's like, do you not want to comment on it? No, it's a complex situation. I'm going to tell you why. I'm actually paraphrasing another preacher. I'm astonished that he said it, because I thought nobody would ever say it in Christian circles. There's very little forgiveness in the Middle East, and that includes Israel. So that's why it's a complex subject to comment on. But at the same time, while I'm saying that, you've got to understand that they're dealing with Islam more than anybody else, as an enemy, not as an alliance, but as an enemy. So for that reason, I have compassion for their unforgiveness. And not justification, but compassion. So you can just play that video on the latest, which might not even be the latest anymore, but I promised I'll go in that direction. So just go to that whole thing, and I'll probably do this one in closing. Yep. Let me see. Hang on one second. Hang on. Yep. Okay, I'll comment afterwards. Just play the video. Not get ahead of myself.
Breaking news at this hour, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is ordering immediate and powerful strikes on Gaza after the Israeli military says Hamas violated its ceasefire. Let's get right to our chief foreign correspondent, Trey Yingst. He's in Tel Aviv for us with the latest from there. Hi, Trey.
Sandra, good afternoon. The Israeli military is carrying out a series of airstrikes inside Gaza after Hamas attacked Israeli soldiers near the city of Rafah. A military official telling Fox News that Hamas violated the ceasefire by shooting at troops beyond the yellow line in an area controlled by Israel. Following that incident, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a high-level security consultation before ordering immediate and powerful strikes inside the Gaza Strip. Earlier this month, 2 Israeli soldiers were killed in southern Gaza during the first major violation by Hamas of the ceasefire agreement. Hamas was set to release the body of an additional hostage tonight, one of 13 that remain inside the enclave. The group's Al-Qassam brigades released a statement last hour saying the transfer would not take place due to what they claim are Israeli violations to the agreement. Overnight, Hamas released the partial remains of an Israeli hostage whose body was already recovered after they promised to release new remains. This issue is a sticking point for Phase 1 and could affect the implementation of the agreement.
Let me say it as it is. In terms of consequences and repercussions for Hamas, nothing is off the table right now.
Phase 2 is being discussed in this ceasefire, but with this Hamas violation today, there are certainly roadblocks ahead. Sandra?
Okay, Trey, thank you very much. We'll check back in soon.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered.
I think that's fine. All right. I have never believed, and I don't know how anybody would have believed it, that has any knowledge of how Islam operates. Not that many people does, but, or most people does, but I've never expected that Hamas would keep their promise. I just don't see that happening. And people's like, well, Netanyahu hasn't kept his promise. Maybe, maybe not. But I'll do say this. How do you know what's happening behind the scenes? If there's a secret strike with Hamas and they know something's coming, I mean, take this in consideration, that any person that knows anything about the Israeli Secret Service, if they know a strike is coming, which their special forces is the only country in the world whose special forces is better skilled than that of the United States, the only country in the world. So if they know something's coming, they'll know it's coming, especially in a war situation like this. So do you expect them, knowing something's coming, that they should not be doing anything about it and wait till it happens and then react? That's the question that I think you should be asking yourself there. All right. Play the next one. Hold on, let me see which one this is. Go to the second one. I mean, I don't know what to say about this. Just go to the second one. I don't think we're going to watch all of it. Israel-Gaza ceasefire resumes.
Hours after launching airstrikes that Gaza health officials say killed 104 Palestinians, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that the ceasefire with Hamas is back on. President Trump said he thought the strike was justified after a sniper killed an Israeli soldier in Gaza, but emphasized that, quote, nothing is going to jeopardize.
Just go back to the portion where she says, Trump says,
is back on. President Trump said he thought the strike was justified after a sniper killed an Israeli soldier in Gaza, but emphasized that, quote, nothing is going to jeopardize the ceasefire. He followed that up with another threat to Hamas, which refuses to disarm or give up control of Gaza.
You have to understand, Hamas is a very small part of peace in the Middle East, and they have to behave. They're on the rough side. But they said they would be good, and if they're good, they're going to be happy, and if they're not good, they're going to be terminated. Their lives will be terminated.
We should note Hamas denies involvement with the shooting of the soldier or violence.
this is my opinion on it. I don't think, like I said in the beginning, I don't think anybody with any kind of proper education about how Islam functions, seeing that Hamas is a part of ISIS, or basically the root of ISIS for that matter, is going to keep to their agreement. It's against their religion to keep to that agreement. So it ain't going to happen. That's not how it works. So for that reason, I've never expected for 1 second that Hamas is going to keep the deal. To believe every media outlet that says that, Israel broke the truce as opposed to Hamas, again, it's what I said earlier. Knowing they're going to strike, are they not allowed to strike? Are they not allowed to defend themselves? Is Israel not allowed to defend themselves? And people's like, well, you got to keep to the deal. You honestly think Hamas is keeping to the deal? Ain't going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So, I wish I could go longer into this with more detail, more information. I just felt that the other issues was more important here than Israel. And people's like, well, this is a major thing going on right now. It's Jerusalem, it's Israel, it's everything else. I get it. But I can only comment about so many things in 1 hour. And so for that reason, we've kind of run out of time. But people's like, well, what should happen in that situation? Get rid of Hamas. Get rid of them. It's not going to change. It's not going to change. And many people would be like, well, can't we do a peace deal there? I told you right in the beginning, there is no peace in Islam. There is no peace. You got to remove them from the planet, or you're going to be dealing with this for forever and ever and ever. That's as simple as that. So what Trump's going to do next, President Trump's going to do next, I don't know. I don't want to comment about that. What do I hope he's going to do? Stick to his word and bomb the living daylights out of them. That's what I hope he's going to do. But anyway, that's all I can say for now. And we love you all. Thank you for tuning in. Share this podcast. If you ask, what am I going to speak on next time? I think next time I'm going to speak on something not about national politics or international politics, but I'm going to speak about some Christian politics. And maybe it's less political than you think it is, but it is political, and it's a great area people are uneducated in. And I'm actually going to market it, and I'm going to share it far and wide. And I'm going to do something on the subject of water baptism, and what water baptism is, and why is it Christian politics? Because you have certain denominations that believe in sprinkling, and other denominations that believe in full submersion, and all these different things. And I want to focus on that. I'm going to speak on that. I'm going to market it. And I want everybody on here that's in here to share on it, because I've had so many Christians reach out to me about the subject, and I've seen so much confusion on the subject. And we're not, this podcast is not about a particular denomination, even though we have our, doctrine and beliefs as a church. And as a leader of a church, of course, we have doctrines and beliefs, and we don't budge on those, because we try and base it off of the Bible as far as we understand the Bible and as far as we believe the Bible is saying. But this is a very important thing. I've just felt this is what I need to do it on. And what I'm going to be speaking on the history of it. So, which is what a lot of Christians sometimes don't do, is they don't go into the history of it. I'll speak on the history of it, and then after that, I'm going to speak on the biblical parts of it, what we can find from the Bible right now, and why we do it. What is the biblical thing here to do? And I'm going to be touching on this. I'm going to be speaking on it. If you know anybody that's that is confused, what is baptism? What does baptism mean? And I'm going to even be speaking a little bit about the baptism of the Spirit. and because there's confusion even on that. And so that's not going to be the primary focus. The primary focus is going to be water baptism, but the methods of water baptism, all right? And people's like, well, that's a sensitive subject. Well, if you want to know more about it, you want to know what the history is, and you want to know what the Bible really says about it, tune in and share this broadcast. We love you. See you next week. Thank you for tuning in.